Normally in Yu-Gi-Oh, you'd want to go first, be able to set up your board, and sort of just win the game from there. But with this deck, we're flipping things on its head, and we're actually wanting to go second. And this deck is incredibly good at going second because of its potential to not only break boards, but also punish your opponent for leaving certain monsters on the field and in the graveyard. And of course, that deck is Plunder Patrol. So what's up guys, this is Tcg Sam here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over my going second Plunder Patrol deck for the new format. So plays against like sort of all the meta decks out there. It can break their boards as well as establish pretty good ones on its own. But without any further ado, let's just hop straight into the video. So I'm going to start things off with the Plunder engine. We are starting with 3 copies of Whitebeard. I'm going to quickly explain them for all of you who don't know what they do, because they are like a relatively unknown deck. Whitebeard effect is essentially, while it's on the field during your opponent's turn, you're allowed to special summon a Plunder Patrol monster from your extra deck with the same attribute as one monster your opponent controls are in the graveyard, and then equip Whitebeard to it. But its other effect is probably its better one. It's when it's sent from hand or the monster zone to the graveyard, you're gonna be able to special summon one Plunder Patrol monster from your deck except itself. So, and of course, you're locked into the only special summoning Plunder Patrols for the rest of the turn, but that's not really relevant. Either way, Whitebeard is probably the best monster in your deck because it's the best discard fodder for your Plunder Patrol monsters and cards. But also just means every time you synchro or link with it, you're able to grab an extra Plunder Patrol body from the deck. And that's really great because that keeps your advantage going. Whitebeard's definitely the one you want to be seeing the most. Next up is Bluebeard. Bluebeard is just a very simple extender. If you control a Plunder Patrol monster aside from itself, you can special summon it. And when it's sent from hand or field to the graveyard, you're able to discard a card and draw a card. So pretty generic effect. Pairs pretty well with a card like Whitebeard. And it's just a great card since you definitely want extenders in this deck to be able to make your link and synchro plays. Next up is 3 copies of Black Eyes. Black Eyes effect in hand allows you to target a Plunder Patrol in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and special summon itself out. So it's a pretty great extender. So it's just a free extender, grabs a card for recursion, and that's pretty important in this deck because a lot of your monsters require you to discard Plunder Patrol cards in order to actually use their effects, and that keeps up your hand advantage. So you definitely want to max it on this as well. Next up is 3 copies of Golden Hair. Golden Hair is also another extender like Bluebeard, except her extension effect is a little different. So while it's in your hand, you send one other Plunder Patrol monster from your hand or face of field to special summon it, and if it's in grave, you can just discard a card to special summon it back. This is great because it's level 4 that can recur itself. It's a tuner, so you can make your synchro plays as well. And it pairs really well with like some discard effects like Whitebeard, for example. So you can see like a lot of these monsters would synergize pretty well with Whitebeard. Just being able to make the most of its effects to keep summoning from your deck. You definitely want to max out on this as well. And the other Plunder Patrol monster we're playing is 2 copies of Redbeard. Redbeard has a similar effect to Whitebeard, whereas on the board, you're able to tag out for another Plunder Patrol monster from your extra deck with a corresponding attribute on your opponent's turn. But I'm only playing 2 copies because its other effect just isn't that great. When it's sent from hand or field to the grave, you just equip it to one of your monsters, which is good because it gives them bonus effects, but it's just not good enough because that just doesn't do enough on its own. And a lot of the times you only really want to be summoning this off of Whitebeard when you discard it on your opponent's turn. So that's why I'm only playing 2. In reality, you can probably get away with just playing 1 since, like I said, it's not that great, and you do have ways to recur it with like Black Eyes if you really need to. But I play 2 because I do play a card like Pot of Desires, so I don't want to banish 1 and not have access to it. But yeah, this is probably the worst out of all the Plunder Patrols, yet it's still good to be played since it's another Plunder Patrol name. Next up, for the field spell of the deck, 3 copies of Plunder Patrol Shipyard and 1 copy of Terraforming to search it out. Plunder Patrol Shipyard is another one of the best cards in this deck because you're able to discard any card to add a Plunder Patrol card from your deck to your hand and get your play started. And in this deck, like even if you only have access to like a single copy of Whitebeard and some random monster on the board, you're still able to get quite far with that. So being able to have access to those Plunder Patrol names is really important, which is why we're maxing out on 3 copies of the field spell as well as the Terraforming. Its other effect is also great because if it's in the graveyard, you can target a Plunder Patrol card in your spell and trap zone, set itself, and return it to hand. So you have a way to recur it from the graveyard even if it gets destroyed. But perhaps its like most underrated effect is all Plunder Patrol monsters you control gain 500 attack for each Plunder Patrol card in your spawn trap zone. So later on in the game, as you start equipping more and more Plunder Patrols and cheating out your extra deck monsters, they eventually get very, very big and difficult for your opponent to deal with. And just having this card on the field means every turn, not only are you able to grab another Plunder Patrol, your Plunder Patrols just get bigger and bigger as well. So this is definitely a great engine card that you want to have access to. And then I am playing one copy of Emblem. This is sort of like a utility card that's searchable off of a lot of your Plunder Patrol extra deck monsters. Its effect is essentially allowing you to equip it to any Plunder Patrol monster on the field, send it to the grave, and special summon a Plunder Patrol monster from your extra deck with like a corresponding attribute, except you can do stuff from your own grave this time. And I think that's really great because in certain matchups, your opponent's not going to be giving you like certain attributes for some of your Plunder Patrols, and you won't be able to summon some of your monsters. So in this case, if you supply the attributes yourself, you can still use this to cheat out the extra deck monsters. Another great thing about it is it equips the monster that you sent anyways. So now there's a Plunder Patrol equipped to your Plunder Patrol extra deck monster, meaning it gets its extra bonus effect. You only play one because it is able to be searched off a lot of your engine, and it doesn't matter if it gets banished off Desires or not, since it isn't really that important to your engine. Speaking of Desires, we are playing 2 copies of Desires just for the extra consistency. A lot of the times you do want a big hand because not only will we have more board breakers and hand traps that way, but just having a bigger hand of Plunder Patrols means that you're able to keep having continuous fodder for your Plunder Patrol monsters as well. So 2 Desires is really good for that. That's it for like the engine part, and essentially like the other half of the deck is just going second cards. Like I said at the beginning of the profile, you want to be going second with this deck. And starting things off, we are playing the Kaiju engine. So we are playing 4 Kaijus as well as 3 copies of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. So Interrupted Kaiju Slumber is essentially a dark hole, and then you just give a Kaiju to each to yourself and to your opponent. And then during the next turn, you can banish it from your grave to add a Kaiju from your deck to your hand, which is really good. Kaijus, you may be aware, like, are able to get around cards like Keshtira Shangri-La, like you get rid of its protection effect and you get rid of the zone lock. So even hypothetically, if they locked all 5 of your monster zones, you could still like Kaiju their Shangri-La and you'd unlock it again. But the big reason why we're playing Kaijus in this deck is because they give attributes to our opponent. A lot of our Plunder Patrols require your opponent to have certain attributes in order to be able to summon them. So by playing like light, earth, and dark, we're playing some of the best like attributes to give our opponent so that we can summon our best extra deck monsters. The reason I'm playing 2 light monsters is for a couple of reasons. One, I feel that the light Plunder Patrol ship that you're able to summon is probably one of the better ones, which you'll see once we get there. But also, since the light ones are so big, I wanted to have the option to where I can give myself one of them, give my opponent one of them, and then just crash them afterwards since they're both 3,300, just to get them off the field after using it for giving our opponent an attribute. Of course, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber is also really great. Board clears can be really good in some matchups this format. So I think just having access to these board clears while we're already playing the Kaijus anyways is incredibly powerful. We're able to essentially break so many boards going second, or at the very worst, like just force out an interruption, and we're able to keep playing from there. So yeah, that's a pretty big Kaiju engine, but the Kaijus not only serve as board breakers, but they also serve as setting up our engine as well, which is why we're playing such a big engine. Next up for the hand traps, I'm playing 3 copies of Nibiru, 3 copies of Ash, and 3 copies of Imperm. So I feel like these are probably the best hand traps of the format. Nibiru is good against like most of the decks out there, aside from like Labyrinth off the top of my head. Ash, Imperm, of course, are just generic, good against like every single matchup. Ash is also great because it stops a card like Book of Eclipse if it's used defensively to try to stop you from making your plays. So you're able to stop that as well. But also, like I said, these just cover a wide slew of matchups. And since you're going second, you want to have these hand traps to be able to stop your opponent from building such a formidable board. Not much to really say about these. These are just, like I said, the best 9 hand traps I feel of this format. The thing about Nibiru 2 in this deck is you give your opponent a light token, which is great since you're able to then use it to summon out your light extra deck Plunder Patrol. Finally, the last 3 cards we play are Evenly Matched. So Evenly Matched is also another great card this format, and we can afford to main it because we are planning on going second. Even if we win the die roll, we're going to make our opponent go first. Evenly Matched is great, hits like pretty much every matchup out there, or at worst like baits out a negate. But the thing is, you have so many ways to force out negates before with like the kaijus, the kaiju slumber, like the imperms. And that's going to make it so a lot of the times this is going to be able to clear your opponent's board and allow you to establish yours, and it'll be so difficult for them to come back from that. So yeah, Evenly is a pretty good card for that. And that's it for the main deck. We are playing 40 cards. Moving on to the extra deck, starting off with the Water Plunder Patrol. It's also like probably the most versatile one. Blackbeard. Essentially, to summon it, you just need any two monsters, including a Plunder Patrol monster, and its effect on board reads, you're able to target any effect monster you control, special summon a Plunder Patrol monster from your extra deck with the same attribute as a monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard, and then equip that monster to it and draw a card. So this lets you access your extra deck monsters essentially on your turn. You don't have to wait for your opponent's turn to use a card like Whitebeard or Redbeard. You're able to summon this, and then on either player's turn, just turn it into a ship. The great thing about Blackbeard is it also equips the monster to the new Plunder Patrol you're summoning from the extra deck, meaning they all get their bonus effects. This is also one that's just easiest to make, the one that you're going to be making the most, since any monster plus a Plunder Patrol turns into this. This means that like if you have like a Slumber, if you have a Nibiru, like that body on your board actually helps you progress your engine because you're able to summon Blackbeard a lot easier. The thing as well is, since it's generic, even if your opponent gives you a card like Ibly, just being able to normal summon any Plunder Patrol means you're able to turn this into your engine and use the Ibly against them, since they give you a dark monster now. And the dark Plunder Patrol is also incredibly powerful. So yeah, this is definitely the key one in your extra deck. You want to play 3, of course. Not only do you like go through 2 pretty often, you also don't want to lose the Cashier where they banish like 2 of these and you're not able to play. So you definitely want 3 for that reason. Next up, for the Light Plunder Patrol ship, it's going to be Liss. So Liss's effect is during the main phase, you can special summon a Plunder Patrol monster from your hand or face a spell in Trap Zone. So that's great because it gives you additional extension, but also its effect is probably one of the best ones. When your opponent activates a monster effect, you can discard a Plunder Patrol card, negate the activation, and if you do destroy it, then if it's equipped with a Plunder Patrol card, you can add any Plunder Patrol from your deck to your hand. So this is, monster negations is typically regarded as like the best negation out there, since a lot of the decks rely on monster effects to get their play started. Being able to have lists is really good for that. But also its extension effect is great. So something you can do, like for example, is you can go like summon Blackbeard, target one of their light monsters, equip it to Liss, draw a card, and then like later on Liss can summon out the Blackbeard again, and then Blackbeard can do the equip again and get another draw. So you essentially get like free ships every time you summon out the Blackbeard with a copy of Liss. So yeah, you definitely want to have your opponent have access to light monsters, so you're able to summon this more often, which is why we focus more on like the light monsters like Nibiru and the kaijus in this deck. You're pretty much never going to be summoning it like there with a fusion spell. Like there is an archetype fusion spell, but it just isn't that good. So you're always going to be cheating it out with the Plunder Patrol effect. Next up, for the Earth ship, Plunder Patrol Jord. This is a new one from Photon Hypernova. It's a generic Synchro 8, which reads, if your opponent special summons a monster, you can add a Plunder Patrol card from your deck to your hand. Then if it's equipped with a Plunder Patrol, you can summon one from your deck, which is really great because you can summon out a card like Whitebeard or Redbeard and go into another ship. But its added benefit is probably like when your opponent doesn't have a certain attribute, you're able to summon this, use the effect on field, add a Plunder Patrol from your grave to your hand, put it in the Pendulum Zone, and then while in the Pendulum Zone, you can declare an attribute and summon a token of that attribute to both players' side of the field with the Plunder Patrol name. So that means you can give your opponent any attribute that you want. So for example, if you need a light monster, you can give them a light token. So even if they're not playing a single light monster in their deck, you're still going to be able to give them the attribute that you want. Yeah, so it's also great because there's a resurgence of Earth monsters in this format, like Cashier Fenrir. So being able to have access to this is incredibly good. So this is a great first turn play, giving your opponent like a token with the correct attribute on the very first turn of the game, even if they had no monsters, allowing you to go into your Plunder Patrol plays from there. So this definitely adds a lot to the deck. Next up, for the Dark Plunder Patrol, 2 copies of Mork. Mork's effect is you can discard 1 Plunder Patrol card, then target an effect monster your opponent controls and banish it. Then you can add a Plunder spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and it's a quick effect if it's equipped with the Plunder Patrol card. So this is like your monster outer, so you can out the big kaijus that you give to your opponent. And of course, Dark is probably the most common attribute in the game at the moment. So you're essentially always able to access this just to be able to remove one of your opponent's monsters, add a spell or trap, so you continually have fodder for your other Plunder Patrols as well. And of course, we are playing 2 copies like with Jordan and List, because these are really good plunders and you don't want your Cashier opponent to like rip both of them out of your extra deck. We are only playing 1 copy of Plunder Patrol ship Brand. I know a lot of people still play 2, but I felt that 1 was sufficient because its effect just is the least applicable out of all of them. It's quick effect, banish a spell or trap your opponent controls, which of course is really great in like back row matchups, but against like most of the meta decks, so like for example like Sword Soul, Kashtira, Tearlaments, like this just isn't gonna do that much. So it doesn't matter if your Kashtira opponent like rips this one up out of your extra deck. I don't really think you're gonna be summoning this against them anyways, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's nice to have. You definitely want to play at least 1 just so you have the option to go into it against like of course the back row decks, but also as a generic synchro to boost all your monsters by 500 attack, and you can beat over big monsters from there. So that's it for the Plunder monsters. And then for the other extra deck monsters, we are playing Almirage. Almirage is particularly important in my opinion because it turns a card like Golden Hair into a lot better of an extender. So with Golden Hair, like and any other card, for example, you can like normal summon Golden Hair, make Almirage, discard that card, summon back Golden Hair, link the 2 off into a copy of Blackbeard, and you have your Plunder engine going there, even though Golden Hair was your only card. So I wanted to have the option for that. But also like another additional thing is if you start with Black Eyes plus like one of these like Golden Hair or like Redbeard or something, like normally this would kind of be a brick, but now you're able to make Almirage by normal summoning one of these, Black Eyes, add it back, make a Bluebeard or Blackbeard, and then Blackbeard gets your engine going. So I think Almirage is pretty important for getting your engine started. You definitely want to play the 1 copy of it, so yeah, really great card. Next up is Adamantipator Risen Dreadhead. It's just a generic level 8 synchro, which reads like during your main phase, you can activate the top 5 cards of your deck and then return cards your opponent controls to the hand up to a number of activated rock monsters. Of course, Nibiru is our only rock monster, so if we get lucky, sometimes we get that effect. But the main reason we're playing it is for its other effect, where if we have a water monster in the graveyard, you can quick effect negate a spell or trap card or effect and destroy it. So just having a generic synchro 8 to be able to negate spell or traps, since our whole deck is essentially water, is really great. And the great thing about it is you can just summon it first before you go into your Plunder Patrol names that like lock you into there. So what you can do is like, for example, summon Whitebeard, special summon Bluebeard, and then synchro for this, Whitebeard summon 1 from deck and do your Plunder plays from there. So yeah, it doesn't particularly matter like too much if we don't summon it, but having access to it is really great. Next up, a similar idea is with Bahamut Shark and Totally Awesome. Since we are playing a bunch of water monsters, we can take advantage of these specific monsters like Bahamut Shark, where it's just a generic 4 that allows us to summon Toad. You can do this like once again before going into the cards that lock you into the Plunder Patrols, which is really great. Totally Awesome, like I don't really need to explain it, one of the best negations in the game out there. But like I said, you don't really need these, but I figured having access to like these defensive cards, these negates, is great because it covers like some of the holes that your plunder ships normally don't, and as well as helps you like build up a defense after going second, because a lot of your cards are very strong going second, but going first you want to have cards like these, access to these. Finally, 1 copy of Zeus. Honestly, I don't really see this coming up like that often. You can do something like Bahamut Shark, attack, summon Toad, make Zeus. That's pretty good, but the main reason why it's here is like it's sort of like a bait for Kashtira, for your opponent to just rip it out of your extra deck, so you can keep like cards like your one of Dragite, your Almirage, and stuff like that. Because a lot of times people are just going to go after the Zeus. But at the same time, like it does come up enough to where I think it does warrant playing, not just for bait, but also because it actually is a pretty good card in your deck. So that's going to do it for the extra deck. And yeah, that's the deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you would change anything or if you have any questions. I will be uploading a video where I take this deck to a local tournament and taking you guys along for the ride and showing you guys how we do. So do stay tuned for that. It's probably going to come out roughly a week or so after this video, or it's already out if you're watching this at a later time. So that being said, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.